Well, firstly, thanks for having me, because I look at the list and I'm just like, what? I'm just some like little schmuck in an office in Wickham. So great to be here.
Very nice.
I met Paul because he was my facilitator through the Freedom course. We finished probably just over 2 months ago now, which is crazy to think it's gone that quick.
Yeah.
I'm married with 2 kids, live in High Wycombe, as I say. Yeah, I run a podcast with my wife called We Have This Hope. And the idea is that we talk about faith and mental health. So when you asked me to be a part of this, I near enough bit your hand off. I think it was like, yes, I want to be a part of that. That sounds amazing.
We couldn't imagine not having you. I mean, listening to your podcasts, I mean, I've re-listened to some of them recently. They are very real. Would really encourage anyone listening to get on and go through, because you talk about some, real everyday life topics and difficulties that people are going through. But you're also really open in your approach and in your podcast about your own journey, which I guess was what inspired you to start the podcast. But could you share a little bit about the type of topics and things that you cover and what we've got to look forward to that you'll be covering next?
Yeah, of course. Well, so yeah, the idea came about. So I had a mental health breakdown when I was working in recruitment, and I was kind of fed up of lining other people's pockets kind of things, and there was stuff going on family wise, and my wife and I just felt this kind of disconnect, I suppose, with the church and mental health. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just we're a part of a middle class, mainly white church. We just don't know how to ask those questions, we don't know how to deal with it when someone says they're struggling with their mental health. It's that, are you okay? And it's like, oh, not really. That's not the question I need asking. So what we decided was, it's based on Hebrews 16:9. We have this hope and as an anchor for our souls, firm and secure. And we kind of thought about it in that way, and like, actually, it is a storm. When you're in these kind of things, you're in storms, and sometimes there'll be ups, you'll be at the top of a wave, and sometimes you'll be low. And I think people spoke about that kind of already. But like, it's that kind of idea of sharing stories and saying, look, you're not going through this alone. Someone else has been in a similar situation. So what we did is we decided to share our stories very openly, my wife and I, because my wife has also, what it was mentioned earlier, I think, she has generalized anxiety disorder. So it's just like her brain wakes up one day and goes, I'm going to freak out about that, and then that, and then that. And it's kind of like, so we were really honest, and we just wanted to be honest because, as you've said already, you need to be authentic in it. Otherwise, people aren't going to listen and understand what you're doing. So what we did is we just invited our friends, basically. We started with our friends. We started with our vicar. He came on and shared about anxiety around leading a church and actually running a big church and taking for a massive building project and having anxiety attacks before preaching on a Sunday morning. And it was just like, well, none of us knew this. And it was like, wow, this isn't amazing that this is happening and we're not seeing it in our leadership of church. And we've had someone share about the loss of a daughter, the loss of a father. And it's just, it's just an opportunity for us to sit with them and hear their story and have that story then hopefully inspire others, really. That's kind of what we're aiming at. But what I would say as well was, we're not mental health experts. I haven't read all the psychology, as I think someone said earlier. I haven't read all that. I just know my experience of my own struggles with mental health, my own journey with God through that struggle, and we kind of share that. And I think it's Peter, it's in Acts, there's a verse, and it was CVM use it a lot. It's just, we're just unschooled ordinary men. And I really love that. Like, we are just ordinary people. We're an ordinary couple. We have our arguments. We do all this kind of stuff. But we know that if we put God at first and we share our story openly, it might help others, and that's important.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you connect with people around this as well and share your story quite openly. I mean, I'm sure it's okay to mention, I won't mention names, but you connected with a footballer, didn't you, recently?
Yeah.
And then just, how you were able just to share a bit of your journey, your story, and how he responded to that.
Yeah, so my wife currently works for our church. She's a communications manager, and also she's been helping with the youth team, because once you're a youth worker, you never get away from it, as I know. I did it for 14 years, and like, they keep getting me back. I don't know how. anyway, they had this footballer, professional footballer, coming to the youth group that week, and she was like, look, none of the leaders like football. It makes no sense that I'm there. It needs to be someone that gets football. So I went along and I had the chance to interview him, and yeah, we just got chatting, and like I think we connected quite well. And yeah, he, without me even asking, I just mentioned the podcast, and he was like, well, I need to do it. I need to share my story. And I was just like, yes. And that's something that we're hoping to get done later this year. So we're currently in the process of putting together our next season of episodes, where we're going to have a few more kind of interviews and be a bit more specific in some of these stories and stuff. But yeah, it's just, I'm so blessed by the way that people respond to it. I had an amazing message actually from an ex-member of my youth group who's not a Christian, but he texted me saying that he'd listened to my story and that he just wanted to let me know that I was one of the most kind of influential parts of his life. He's not a Christian, but he listens weekly because he loves to hear what we're saying. And for me, it's like I started planting that seed when he was 12 years old, in terms of like, God loves you, and that, and the fact that even now he's in his 20s and he's engaging with something that I'm doing because of who I am. But then by doing that, is it being exposed to Jesus? And I'm just like, yeah, crack on, like see what happens. So yeah, it's just loads of people, like messages like that, like, and I know that I've got lots of non-Christian friends that text me and say, oh, we loved your episode, and like, you're listening, that's amazing. So yeah, love it.
That's brilliant, and it just shows how important it is for us to connect, though, isn't it? I think, particularly in the context of men's mental health, men traditionally are pretty terrible at keeping in touch. We can be bad for it, and life's busy, isn't it? We've talked on the sessions, which we'll get onto, but how busy life is sometimes. And we've heard it said a few times, about this, pace of life just going whizzing past us, and we don't actually take any time just to even check in how we're doing, and check in with other people, see how they're doing, and vice versa, and then crash. We hit a crisis or something when actually we could have just had a conversation. We could
definitely
purposefully, intentionally apply to go on, say for example, like the Freedom course, or to do the Keys to Freedom book and things like that. Why? Because we can.
Yeah,
because we can. So I'd love to hear a little bit. We couldn't not ask you some questions or some to get some thoughts on what your experience of the Freedom course was, how you even found out about it, why you decided to apply, all of the above. You do you.
You do me. Are you sure? Remember the detours we would go on in our sessions?
I do. I remember, and I loved every single one of them.
Ridiculous amount of movie quotes. So, well, I knew about the Freedom course because a friend of mine, she went to it when it was a residential, female-only residential. And I remember her kind of explaining that she was going to do this and kind of hearing about it and thinking, well, that's cool. But I think even at the time I was like, what about me? I don't get to do something like that. But that was how I heard about it. And then later on it was, so kind of I was working, as I said, and I had this kind of really quite bad mental health breakdown. And I decided that I was going to take a year off from work and start the podcast and just kind of do things that were good for my mental health and good for my own well-being, kind of looking after my kids a bit as well. That was fun. And again, this lady at church, she came up to me and said, have you thought about doing the Freedom program? Like, I know that you're looking for something to do. Have you thought about it? And I was like, oh, no, I haven't. And I literally phoned up that day and I spoke to someone and they said, oh, well, we're not actually taking anyone on at the moment. You can put like an email in or whatever to say that you're interested. I was like, yeah, fine. Didn't expect to hear anything back. And the next day I got an email saying, we'd love to have a chat with you about being on it. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, this feels like a God moment. Yeah, and then it was just kind of going through that process of getting onto it. And the more I learned about it and the more I realized what it was, I was terrified because, I knew that it would be a case of having to work through a lot of stuff that I had very meticulously repressed for a long time. And, stuff that I didn't want out. It was hid that there for a reason. But the more I prayed about it, the more I kind of heard about it, the more I went through the process. I was just like, this is going to be awesome. And I remember watching Ariana's talk that kind of I was told to watch before starting the program, and it's that whole like, we walk through it to help through, and I that just had me, and like it's something that I think I was already doing. Like I like supporting people. I was a youth worker for 14 years. It's like I've definitely walked through it myself and with others in that time. So it was just like, well, this seems like the right choice. And then I met Paul and it was all wrong. Sorry, it was all great. And then the weekly sessions, as you say, I mean, you spoke about it earlier, the bridge tool. Oh, the bridge tool. I loved it. Because I remember when you mentioned it, in my head, I think I even said, "What the heck?" Like I didn't say it out loud. I think it
might have been out loud.
Actually, to be fair, it was probably out loud. And I was expecting myself to do like a big suspension bridge, very kind of Victorian, and it was this little kind of old stone bridge that was chipped and stuff. And I think that I came out of that session being like, I'm not where I thought I was with my journey with God, and that's okay. Like I know there's work to do, and I think then moving through there was just so much. I think one of the big things for me, wasn't it, when we got to the forgiveness myths?
Yes.
Which I just think that really struck me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And there was the one kind of around, you can forgive someone but you don't have to have them in your life. That for me was a big thing. I'm very open about it on my podcast, so I'll talk about it on here. So I have issues. Unfortunately, I've had a relational breakdown with my mum. A lot of kind of weirdness, and that's what kind of led to my mental health issues. I think the anxiety and the depression that I suffered. And it was something that I don't think I'd let go of properly. So when we started talking about this forgiveness myths and stuff, because I think in my head it was like very hard to forgive her, because I was thinking, well, I've got to try and bring her back into my life, and I'm not sure that I'm ready for that. I'm not sure if I want that. I'm not sure. And it was to read that it's okay to forgive, but and not have them necessarily be a straightaway part of your life. I think that was a really interesting moment for me. And your guidance through that was amazing. Anyone listening, Paul, great.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Although he did have a breakdown once on the way to one of our sessions, which I said was my move, and that's not allowed. It was a car breakdown, but it's
I did have a breakdown. Yeah, just to clarify, it was a car breakdown, not a live
yes,
breakdown.
But it sounds funnier when you say it from a point of a therapy session, doesn't it?
Yeah, you were great. You were great to take through the course. An absolute privilege and honor, and just to see your commitment into it and the revelation that you got, and how you went at the pace that you wanted to go to. Sometimes you ramped it up, but you parked on some of the stuff and actually really went through it. And I had a great respect for the courage that you showed there. But it was kind of like you'd decided you were going to get whatever breakthrough God would give you, and you were going to take it, and you did.
100%. And I think you spoke about it earlier, the generational stuff. That was really interesting, because I think when I've always heard like generational patterns and things like that, they've always been a negative thing. But actually, when we spoke about the fact there are positives from that as well, that was really interesting. Kind of like, actually, my sense of humor, that's clearly come down from my father, he's quite a funny guy, and I think I get it from him. And then there's generosity, and I can see things that have come down generationally which were positive, and I don't think I'd ever really thought of it that way before, or it had never been explained that way before. And it was that kind of like actually taking time to really truly look at stuff like that is just such a blessing. It's this opportunity to really kind of go back to basics with yourself and with God, and just say, look, I'm broken. I am broken. I know it. And I know that because I'm so broken, I'm not connecting with you properly, and being able to go through that. And one of the big things that we really hit on was, and it was so amazing, was the armor of God. And I said to you at the time, I was like, armor of God is like, it's something that you're taught at Sunday school, and you hear about it, and you're taught all the way through church if you grow up in church. you know, the armor of God. And it's like, yeah, armor of God, right, sort of something, whatever. But when we got to it, I was also reading the book of called Troy by Stephen Fry, and because I love mythology and history. And there was this whole section about Achilles' shield, and then we did the four-door thing, which was amazing. And we looked at that and got shutting doors and kind of sealing them with God's help. And it was this idea of the shield just really got me, because what I'd read in the book about how shields and armor were coveted on the battlefield. So actually, when there was someone died, there was actually a fight just as fierce over trying to get the armor. Like the enemy wanted it; they wanted to show it off. They wanted to say, "Look, we've got this. He's lost it." And I think that was really interesting, and it really changed my perspective on like the armor of God kind of thing. It was like, well, okay, well, actually, then this is special. God's given me this. My shield has my story on it, and the enemy wants it. And it was through that prayer time actually with yourself, Paul, where you gave me that image of like me being stood with a shield lined up with others as well. And it was just all this stuff came together so well and kind of opened my eyes to things. And I'm just so thankful for it, really. It was just great. I could talk all day, you know. As I say, we're
listening all day.
But that's what concerns me.
Well, Trevor, I've got a couple of questions. We've never met. Hello, I'm Rob.
Hi, Rob.
So I just real quick, I worked for Mercy for a long time and volunteered for a monstrous amount of time before that. So I'm fully involved in the Mercy program and the Mercy ethos and vision. But anyway, right at the beginning when you were speaking about how your mental health was sort of showing itself, you said you took time off work. You said you took a year off.
Yeah.
Just because that's probably not a normal thing for people to do, certainly for guys to do, and certainly in their workplaces, people just don't tend to get a year off. What did that look like? Was that sick leave? Was that actually, I'm just going to quit and hope, or did you have savings in the bank? Just because for the normal everyday Bob that's watching this, they go, "Oh, mate, I'd love a year off." How did you make it happen?
No, it was. I am very privileged in terms of we had enough in savings to do that, and also, so I married well. You know, I was a working class guy. I've now been kind of promoted to middle classness. But we had in the year where kind of previous to this last one, I bought half the house that I live in now. It's my father-in-law's house. He unfortunately lost his second wife, and he was living in a 6-bedroom on his own. So we managed to move in with him. And because of that, we were able to kind of share those bills. So we were very fortunate. And I know I'm very fortunate in terms of being able to do that. Mm-hmm. The first month of that time was sick leave.
Okay.
And it was during that time that I had a conversation with my then boss, who told me that I had nothing to be sad about. I had a nice house and I had a family and all of this. And I came off that call and I was so angry. I just was like, I can't believe that she's not got it. Like, I'm not putting this on. I'm like, I've been diagnosed with this. The doctor has told me to do this. And I just said to my wife, Fee, I was just like, I can't go back. Like, there's no way that I can see myself going back into that environment and ever being okay with it. And so, yeah, it was something that, so ever since we've been together, it's always been me that kind of went out and did the full-time work and allowed Fee was at home, and she was amazing doing full-time mumming, which actually I always think is harder, having done it for a year as a full-time dad. That would never say otherwise. And it was this kind of opportunity where Fee was like, well, I'm doing this in my job and I'm doing extra work here, and that's going to earn a bit of extra money. And it was a really amazing, I felt very humbled by it. For her to turn around and say, you take a year and you invest in your mental health and you invest in your relationship with God, and you kind of learn new skills and things like that, and we'll see where we are at the end of it. And it was fair to say you.
Yeah, okay. So it's fair to say, well, firstly, you married into money and then married into someone that's like, yeah, fine, you can take a year off and I'll work. So became kept man for a year. But seriously, did it at the beginning? I think I know the answer to this from what you're saying, but was it? Yeah, actually, I'm taking a year, or did it just sort of go? I'm taking a bit of time, ended up being a year.
We said a year. We set out and we just said, look, take 12 months, and I can do a bit of work here and there, and I did. I did some. So I'm a HR professional, outside of recruitment, and I did some contracting for Wycliffe Bible Translators, a charity that I used to work for. Did some HR stuff for them, and then I did some contracting for other stuff. So it was like I wasn't actively out of work completely, but I was taking that time to really invest in me. And the Mercy course came into that. And that if I hadn't have had that time off, I don't think I'd have been able to do the Mercy course as easily. I would have made it work, but like it would have been a bit more stressful and things. But not everyone can do that. And I know that I was very, very privileged to sit in that position and take that time.
So I'm just trying to get the timeline right in my head, really. So you obviously you called it, all right, I'm taking a year. How far into that was the Freedom course?
The Freedom course was about 6 months in, actually, because actually I had a bit of a spiral in there in that first 6 months. So I invited my mum back into my life for a little bit, and it was going quite well, and then it didn't go well. Spectacularly not well, and so therefore I had a bit of a spiral, and it was about the 6 month time where my wife just turned around to me and went, "We made an agreement and you're not sticking to it." So she called me on my
You got told.
I did. Someone said earlier that they're not the leader in their house. Amen, brother. I know that I am not, and she told me to do something about it, and she literally gave me the telephone number for Mercy. She put it on my phone and pressed the button and then just handed it to me. So it's like I was like, okay, and I realized as well, like I wasn't doing what I said I was going to do in that time. I'd been distracted by things. My mental health wasn't great again, and I was pretending to be an introvert. And
what did those 6 months look like then? Those first 6 months before your wife bravely hit call on a telephone and handed it to you. What did that look like? I'm sure there'll be sort of the school runs and stuff that you actually I'm going to say the good stuff, the stuff that you got to do. But actually, what did it look like for you? The ups and downs, the nitty-gritty of it all.
So school runs, looking after he was then 3-year-old, he's quite full on. So all of that kind of stuff, the housework stuff, I was taking that on, which was all a bit of a change from the normal 9 to 5 that I'd always done. So it was nice at the start. It was a bit of a change of environment and things. But then I realized that I wasn't seeing people. And then it became harder to see people, because actually I was like, well, hang on a second, I'm not seeing people. And, and I would say that I wasn't necessarily getting messages, and I wasn't messaging people to ask for help. And that's what we were talking about earlier. You guys were talking about earlier. Like, actually, I shut myself off a little bit, and that became more insular. And then, but from that, I spent time working on our business. So I'm wearing my merch because I'm shameless. My wife is an artist as well. She's a kind of graphic artist, and she designed all these products and stuff. So we built this shop, and we built our website, and we built the kind of idea behind this hope. So that was kind of what was happening in that time. But then there was a lot of time where I was just not doing anything, and it was, I was becoming. I loved it during. This is a silly thing to say. It's like a oxymoron. I loved it during lockdown, watching Rob Beckett on Instagram stories, because he would just say this thing every day, and it was like, yeah, I agree. And he would just be like, every day is the same, every day is the same. And it got to my life where I was like that, and I wasn't reaching out to friends. I wasn't doing things, and actually, the best thing that ever happened was Fee giving me that kick up the butt to say, you've not held up your end of the bargain. What the heck? So yeah, I think that kind of says what. I don't know. Sometimes I ramble, so just stop me if I'm rambling.
No, it's good. No, it's good.
It speaks into the importance of having people around. So it's been one of the themes that we've covered in some of the other talks, is the danger of isolation, because we do it either to protect ourselves or to protect a sense of image. or out of fear. But actually, when we do that, we take ourselves away from the people that can actually see what's going on and see what we need. Yeah, so it's incredible. We need people like that in our lives that are close enough to the reality, that see it, that can then give us that kick when we need it. Because I don't know if you found this. I'd love to hear you talk about it, but from my personal experience, but also from seeing and hearing other people, it is that first step. It's literally that. It's actually a very thin layer. It's a very kind of, but we avoid it at all costs. It's the first step of going, yes, I need help, or yes, I'm going to pick up the phone and book an appointment with a counsellor. But the minute we're the other side of that, we're like, I don't know what I was worried about. What was that journey like for you?
Well, yeah, I suppose the anxiety is always way worse than the actual thing. To be fair, I'd done talking counselling before, Christian talking counselling as well. So it was like I knew that it would help. But I think I just got myself into this like, oh, I'm fine, like, because I'm an idiot. And it was like, instead of actually facing up to the fact that I probably wasn't fine, and having gone through the freedom course with Paul, I was not fine. Like there was stuff there that was definitely not okay. But I think it was that almost lethargy, almost really kind of like I'd got to this point where I was like, oh, it's fine, I'll do it later. I don't need to worry about me. One of the things that we've always kind of done is my wife and I, as I said, both suffer with mental health issues. So it's kind of like one of us tries to, we always joke that one of us tries to be on, the other one off. So we're one of us is supporting, one of us is breaking down. And I think, it was Fear's time to kick me out of the backside and get me going. Whereas, I've done that several times with her as well. But it's one of those things that I'm so glad I did it, because being able to have the opportunity to open up and talk through that with, and Paul's great, because Paul will sit there and listen, and then you're thinking that you're talking too much, and then he'll just come out with this absolute banger of insight into what you've just said, and you're like, oh yeah. and so pleased to have been able to go through that journey with him. I think that's I'm trying to just I don't know what to say on that one really, because it was like there was a lot of lethargy. I don't think I had a lot of anxiety around it. I think I was just being lazy, if I'm being really honest about the way I was. It's that kind of thing. Fee actually said something to me the other day, it made me laugh. She went, do you have a to-do list for all the things we need to do in the house? I went, in my brain. And she went, what about writing it down so it actually gets done? And I was just like, all right, fair enough. It's like,
I think it's also just a tragic reality that so many men, and I'd include myself in this, have just accepted mediocrity. They've just accepted a certain way of being. And I don't know whether it's just because we don't have hope that things can change, or whether it's the fear of what it would take to change, or whether it's just we see everyone else around us is a little bit miserable, so we think it's fine. But I think it's one of the core underlying issues is how willing we are to settle for something that is not bringing out the best of us, and we're not being the best versions of ourselves, and we just accept it as the way it's always going to be, without the sense of hope that things could be different. When you started the freedom course, did you have a sense of hope?
Yeah, definitely.
Immediately, did you tell straight away that it was?
I think even from my initial conversations with the team at the beginning, I could tell through that, the way that, I can't remember her name now, but she was absolutely brilliant. The way that we spoke and the way that she could see how the course might help me. And it was like, the Mercy put me through the food course with Harriet as well, which was so good, because I've always struggled with kind of eating and stuff. I said to Harriet on the thing, and my secret was stealing spoonfuls of Nutella when I was stressed. And like the fact that it was not just going to be kind of the main Mercy bit of the main freedom program, where there was other opportunities to look at other areas that I struggled with that would cause me anxiety and things like that. I just was like, this is going to be amazing. And it definitely was. And I don't think I didn't feel like I got bored of it, if that makes sense, because it's 16 weeks. It feels like at the beginning you look at 16 weeks and you're like, that's a long time. And then you get on the course and you're like, that's not a long time. It's like, poor Paul, the amount of times I had to reschedule because of a child throwing up on me or something like that. It was just being able to look ahead and go, right, I'm going to look at myself for like a month. What the heck? I'm going to give myself that much time. I'm going to look at my relationship with God for a month. I'm going to look at my relationship with others for a month, and it's all going to come together. And I came out of it with the tools to be able to deal with stuff that comes my way, and the mentality to go, I need help, and the mentality to go, God, I don't know what's going on, but give me something. And that was really great in that sense. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask a question that you probably might need a minute or two to sort of ponder and think. Obviously, the Freedom Course is split into relationship with self, relationship with God, relationship with others. Is there one more, Lewis?
Setting the stage.
Oh, at the beginning, yeah. Okay. So those three relationship sort of sections. What would be your big aha moment, your big takeaway moment for each one of those?
Oh.
So feel free. We'll just kick back and have a drink. And
yeah, no, definitely.
And look, let's face it. Some of them might be deeply personal. So if it is deep, I've got one, but I'm not sharing it. Is a total cool answer.
I don't really have deeply personal bits. I'm quite open with everything that I think. That's one of my problems. I think, from what I'm trying to remember it all, as I say, the relationship with others is when we looked at the forgiveness myths, I believe, and the generational patterns. And for me to come away from it with an understanding of kind of, these generational patterns are good and bad, and actually being very conscious of that in terms of my children. What patterns am I putting in place that they're going to take forward as well? It's really, that was something that I really kind of pondered over for a long time. The armor of God stuff, as I say, definitely, it's something I've spoken about so many times since. That's the kind of relationship with God side of it, and actually understanding. And it was, for me, it was, I got fixated on the shield, because the shield is so much more than just a shield. It's it's a bed. It's so important. And I was like, okay, well, I've spoken about that lots as well, in terms of we need to take care of our armor, and that means we need to kind of spend more time with God and understand these things. And I think that, even this weekend, as I say, I've just gone to the gathering, having opportunity to listen and hear other people's testimonies, and just kind of go, oh yeah, I get it, and build, and knowing then how to ask God for that kind of thing in my life, and that kind of faith and stuff has just been awesome.
So let me just wrap it. So you've got the one with others was about forgiveness.
Yeah, definitely.
The one with God was about armor. And sidebar question to that: how do you use that on a daily basis? For the average Bob that's watching this, going, do I actually get dressed? Like, how do you? And obviously everyone's going to use it differently. And actually,
yeah, of course.
Different. How do you? What's that look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I suppose, yeah, I don't physically get dressed in the morning with a load of armor.
But actually, I didn't mean it to be a mixtape, because actually, I know people actually do sort of go, right, okay, I'm just trying to pretend it on, if you like, and sort of.
I know what you mean. I think that I kind of do my little Bible verse of the day and kind of all the stuff around that every day on my phone, because it was the easiest way of making sure that I'd get that. And I think that kind of thing, and actually remembering what we spoke about with the armor of God and stuff like that, is just, I try to bring it in every day. I'm not going to say I do every day. I'm probably I'll get distracted or whatever by life, as we've already spoken about. Life gets in the way a lot of the time, doesn't it? But it's that, those kind of fundamentals of that, and the change in the way that I looked at it, I think that's something that's kind of changed just my attitude generally coming out of the Freedom Course. That actually, I don't see reading the Bible now and trying to spend time with God as a chore, as something that that I have to make time for. It's just no, that's important. That's more important than having an extra cup of tea and taking 10 minutes to look at TikTok or whatever.
And in a busy household with kids and life, how does that fit? Is that both? I remember when my kids were young, they're not so young now, but when they were young, I was like, my son was getting up in the 4s. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
oh mate, I'm not doing Bible study at 3 a.m. Like that ain't happening.
No.
So it just took a nosedive. Right? How do you fit that in your world?
Yeah, I think it's a case of well, so now I'm working for a charity at the moment, and I have the flexibility to hit my microphone if I want to. No, I have the flexibility to take time out if I need to, and I now try and do it in that time after the school run.
Okay.
I try and take some time there. If not, so I have a son. My son is, as I say, he's 4 years old, and bless his heart, he does not sleep well. So it takes like 2 hours to go to sleep at night. So, you know, sometimes I'm sat in his room and I'm just like, ugh. So I'm listening to the same Life is a Highway from Cars over and over again on repeat for 2 hours. And it's just like, go to sleep. So sometimes, you know, I'll even just go to the Bible app then and have a look at, read the Bible verse of the day and the kind of stuff around it, because otherwise I'm probably going to try and hit him with a pillow, you know? So it's like, I try and fit it in around stuff like that. And again, I don't always manage it, but, and I'll be really honest with that. But I try my best to, and I'm really lucky because I now do 1 day a week working for my church in their cafe, and I managed to get the day where they do staff prayer, so I get to go to that every week as well and just spend spend half an hour, 40 minutes with others, just praying into things for the life of our church, and that's for me, that's so precious. I'm really lucky to be involved in that. But actually, one thing that came out of the weekend away was, you know, some of my closest and oldest friends were there, and this was a time we don't get all the time where we had no distractions. And there was one session that was amazing, and there was a guy called Sean who was an ex-paratrooper that shared his story, and it was it's just absolutely unbelievable. And one of my friends said, we're going to go back to the camp now and we're going to do prayer. You can join in if you want, but it's compulsory. It was like, and so and it was like, what? Hang on. So we all went back and we had this, I'd say, kind of half an hour, 40-minute prayer time together as just 5 men being super open, super honest about how we're feeling. You know, there was anger at God, there was disappointment, there was the worries about future, and we just sat together and we just prayed. And it was incredible moment of kind of brotherhood. Like, we were all really open about where we were, and for me that was so important. And I've come out of that going, that needs to be more often. I can't have that being a once a year thing. And actually, you know, how does that look, and trying to figure that out going forward. And I've got a few ideas already, but I've not kind of formulated them properly. But it's like, that felt incredible to sit with fellow men that all have our own problems, but we are joined by a love of God, and that was really great to be a part of.
That's amazing. It's probably worth noting, just for anybody who is interested in the Freedom Course, to talk about that structure and what could seem like quite a challenge. But one of the things that we did, and you did at the beginning of each module, was to actually set some realistic goals. We used the SMART goals principle. You know, you were picking measurable goals, things that were achievable, that were realistic. You know, they are specific. And then as you progress through the modules, you were building that habit in, so that you knew, for example, when you were going to have a busy period because you had some of your podcasts to record, and you knew that there was, you know, the switching for the schools and some bits and pieces with working for the kids, and what you actually did was to process through that and to put some planning in there. And that's partly my role as a facilitator, is to help frame things in a way that makes it realistic for you to go through the module content, you know, taking into account your learning styles, that type of thing. And actually there is just some practical elements to the course that have come from all of the years of experience with the various staff and teams at Mercy, and building the program into what it's now evolved into in the Freedom Course, to be able to deliver it in such a way where God can use that framework, but without it being so rigid that it's a one size fits all. You know, your journey on the Freedom Course is your unique journey.
Yeah, definitely.
It's your unique journey. And for the big thing from my perspective that I remember is the renewing the mind element that's threaded through the whole of the course. When you realized that you weren't doing some stuff you weren't responding or reacting in the way that some stuff you would have caused you to withdraw. You actually faced it, and you realized, oh, I didn't withdraw, I did this. Like you were saying, you weren't going to just accept mediocrity in that, and to just go, oh well, you didn't. You actually you picked up your shield.
Yeah,
you picked up your shield.
I definitely felt like if I'm gonna do this, I've got to do it. Like, these tools that we go through, and you teach me and teach anyone else on the Freedom Course, they're so important, and they're so useful to kind of reevaluate the way that you see things. And I think that was really important. But I also think that there were some weeks where you could just tell I wasn't right. And we would just chat, and actually we would chat about our weeks, we'd chat about silly things like cars, for instance, breaking down on you. And it was actually, I'd come away from those as well being like, oh, it was good, because then you'd finish it with a prayer, and it would be like, I came away being like, actually, I needed that. That was really great. And it was the flexibility to be able to say, from your point of view, and clearly that your skills in that area of saying, oh, this is not going to be the session we were planned, but actually we're just going to do this, and we're going to, get through it. I thought that was really great.
I think it was James, wasn't it, that was saying about coming alongside. I think, when we get the great honor and have the privilege as facilitators of doing this role and coming alongside. And I think that back to the word, one of the words from the Holy Spirit means to come alongside.
Yeah.
One who comes alongside. And I think it's beautiful, certainly from my perspective, to watch and be a part of that, and to see you do what you do with God, and God do what he does with you. And I appreciate you sharing it, and the vulnerability that obviously brings.
We've had a couple of questions come through from my wife, so I better read them out, or
you'll be in trouble.
So if you could choose 3 words to describe the experience of the Freedom Course, what would they be?
Oh, good one. Challenging. Definitely challenging. Renewing, I would say, as well, actually. I felt different afterwards. It's such a good question. It's difficult to choose just 3. That's the problem.
We'll allow you a few more if it's easier, just to read off words.
I suppose it's kind of
He's quite good at talking, so I reckon this might be a good learning curve for you. Just
yeah. Hey, I'm dyslexic. That's my way of communicating. So I would say challenging, renewing, and I think just a journey is kind of the best way. Like, actually, considering I went from a bridge to 4 doors, so I must have got home at some point, which I would say that it's a journey that is very challenging, but if you commit to it and you give it your all, and you trust God, and you have faith that he's going to be there with you along the way, it's life-changing as well, I think, in renewal.
If your wife was on the call, please.
Oh yeah, she's escaped. Yeah.
What would she say the differences were that she saw in you, having done the Freedom Course?
Probably. That's a good question. I'm putting words in her mouth. You could get me in trouble here. I would say that she would have seen a lightness in me. I let a lot of things go, and I tried to stop holding those kind of burdens and self-inflicted pain, I suppose, in terms of like holding on to stuff and not letting it go. So there would have definitely been that. And I think an openness as well. Like, actually, I was able to, we've always been able to talk about things, but I think I was able to bring stuff up that I'd never kind of bridged before with her. And, she learned a bit about my childhood and stuff that I'd forgotten until we had the conversations. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that now. It's like, oh, that wasn't so great, but hey ho. It's so I think there's been that kind of lightness and openness that's changed. And I think as well, like, my willingness to talk to others has gone up. I've always spoken to others, as you can probably tell. I like to talk, and my willingness now to talk to those that aren't Christians, or even that are, that yeah. So I'll give you an example. It's probably the best way of doing it. One of my friends. So sadly, we lost a friend recently. She was taken ill very suddenly. She was the same age as Fee. She was 30, 31, 33. Gosh. And
We're in trouble.
no, yeah, I made her younger, so it's fine. It was sudden, and it's brutal. You know, she has a young family, this lady that unfortunately passed away. And, you know, there are people out there and one of my friends was really struggling with that anger, and he was saying, I know it's silly to have this anger. And I'm like, no, it's not though. That's your feeling. Don't try and stop that feeling of anger, because it's fine for you to feel that. But like, let's look at where that's coming from. Like, let's pray into why you're feeling angry. And hopefully then we'll be able to see you through that anger, rather than you sitting and festering on it and it destroying that relationship with God. And I think that it's that kind of stuff that you know, I'm hearing Paul's voice in my head when I'm having those kind of conversations. It's like, yeah, just I'm hearing that northern drawl, you know, just do this. And it was just like, having that kind of knowledge now and that ability to share with others. Like, I'm hoping to help out on the Keys to Freedom course that we're going to be running at the church. I'm hoping to be a leader on that as well soon. So there's just that kind of eagerness now to go out and tell people there is another way. Like, that you can live differently, you can live free. Don't shackle yourself. Don't think that your emotions are a bad thing. Don't think they're silly or stupid or whatever it is you're going to label it. Let's turn it around. Let's positive it. Let's feel that emotion. Let's bring God into it and work through it together. And I think that's kind of something that I'm so glad that I've taken away from the course.
Yeah. There's another question that came through asking for your thoughts and advice for people that are either on the waiting list to start or just starting the Freedom course. What would you, as a veteran of the course, a graduate of the course,
survivor
of the course, what would be
you know, I went through Paul's teaching, you know. No, I think it's just that, give it your all. Like, don't be prepared to take down the walls, I think is the easiest way of doing it. Be prepared to not have it come brick down bit by brick, but it will kind of be smashed out from underneath you, kind of thing. And just be vulnerable. Like, it's so hard to have that time. So, and if you're going into it and you're trying to hold things back or not be honest about where you are, then it's not going to help you. I think you've got to, from my point of view, this is again my perspective, so it might not match for everyone, but I went in knowing that I needed to sort myself out. I was in a bad place and I needed help. And it's that actually I needed to be vulnerable with Paul. I needed him to know my backstory and where I was and how I was feeling, because that's the only way that we can heal and go forwards. And I think that, you know, if you're about to start or you're on the waiting list, just kind of pray into that for you as well. Like, just be open to everything your facilitator is going to throw at you, because it'll be fun as well. There will be bits where you'll laugh and there'll be bits where you cry, and God will probably do amazing things in those sessions for you and a lot of healing. So just be open to it, I think, is the easiest way of saying it. It says.
Absolutely fantastic. You like a good t-shirt, don't you, Trevor?
I do like a good t-shirt.
I did the Freedom course and lived with 16 weeks with Paul.
I survived Paul.
To be fair, Paul, you did near enough have a heart attack halfway through, so I must have had some effect.
That's no joke either.
Fair
No,
enough.
I'm not even joking. It's like, when I got an email saying Paul's been ill and we can't tell you when he'll be back.
Trevor, if you don't mind, just to zoom out a little bit from your personal journey to what you see amongst friends around you and the church around you. Have you got any thoughts, top tips, or ideas as to what we can do about the fact that men do find it so hard to reach out? I guess maybe a double-barreled question. Why do you think it is that so many men do struggle to reach out for help? And all the stats kind of show that men find it harder, that they internalize too much, and it has a really dangerous impact. Yeah, is that something you've seen? Why do you think that is? And then what other things, you alluded to something earlier on in the conversation. It sounds like you've already started to process this and think, what can I be doing with a group of guys around me to change this story and change this narrative? But for anyone that's listening, what are your top your thoughts about why men don't open up, and your top tips as to what we can be doing to change the culture around that?
I think, so as I say, I go to the gathering quite a lot, and CVM are doing this kind of thing so well in terms of trying to reach men. And, they joked about the fact that they've started a Christian Vision for Women, and the fact that they'll probably get to 1 million much quicker than men, because men are so reluctant to come forward. And I think, even in my own church, myself and my friend Josiah, we looked around our congregation and realized there were so many weeks where wives were coming with their children, but the dads weren't coming.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're trying to wonder, what is it about that kind of environment? And I think for some men, I suppose the whole singing and singing love songs effectively, because quite a lot of worship songs are, if you look at them, they're quite love songs. And that might be difficult in that kind of, you spoke about it with James, a bit of that masculine culture, I suppose, that we've all grown up in, that we have to be strong and silent and not own up to our feelings. And I think that's changing in churches. I genuinely think it is changing, that actually there's been a bit of a realization that, maybe we need to change the way that we go about things. The classic of doing either a curry night or a full English breakfast, I suppose, isn't it? Is one way of doing it. But even just having opportunities to sit around a fire, I think fires are so good. I love fire, love setting things on fire. And CVM actually are doing this. They're doing this at the moment. They are actually making fire pits, but they're sending out to people for free, but as long as you use them. So actually, it's things like that where actually we just get someone together and say, look, someone bring some beer, someone bring some meat, I'll bring the wood, let's go. And I think just having those opportunities for fellowship with other men is so important. And yeah, it's trying to be honest with your brothers in Christ, which is not always easy. Because again, we're always worried about showing weakness, but actually I find that some of the best conversations I've had just generally has been when we actually are open and vulnerable with our friends about how we're feeling and how we're doing, and finding out as well that generally they're probably not doing as well as they make it seem like they are.
We've had another question on the YouTube chat. This time it's my wife's turn to but we laugh. I'm not too sure whether she's asking this question to you, Trevor, or whether she's asking this question to me. And it says, a lot of the guests touching on the impact of unspoken pain on their partners. Women are often shouldering the invisibility that wider society has shunned men into. And I think that's something probably yeah, definitely me. But there's to kind of unpack that question a bit more. There is a truth that when men retreat and when men struggle and when men can't talk about their feelings and they can't move beyond that and do the deeper work, then often it means that burden of doing that and being there for the kids and for the family and for society and even for the church as a whole, it falls onto women who do seem to do it and who seem to be more prepared to do it. It's a question not just for you, and I think we'll hi Paul, stay with us. We're just finishing up with Trevor, but don't go anywhere. You can join in the conversation. Yeah, it's probably a theme we'll try and unpick through guests that come on as well, because I think we as men, we have to just accept. James talked about it in the interview before about responsibility, that we have to take responsibility for the impact of our decisions. And when we struggle to open up and we choose not to, and we choose to internalize it and repress it, it has an impact. It has an impact on our wives, on our children, on our parents, on our community. Anything that you'd like to say on that?
I think being open in about mental health stuff, as I say, my wife suffers with anxiety as well and depression. So the fact that both of us have moments where we're feeling rubbish, it's okay for us to come out to each other and say, look, I'm feeling crap today. I'm feeling crap today. And actually, okay, well, then in that case, let's look at our day and assess what we're going to do. Who's going to take what? Who's going to take on the mental load of the day? And I think that it's taken a long time for us to get to that, and we still don't get it right. But it's something that we try to do, and I think it's so important actually in a relationship. Especially, you know, when my mental health, effectively the court came out and everything came out, it was a mess. I was a mess. I was no help, especially because I went on to antidepressants and things like that. That 2 weeks of kind of when you're first taking them, and I didn't want to get out of bed, things like that. And it's actually, some of that could have been avoided if maybe I've had more conversations that were a bit more open, which we now try and build into our relationship. So just taking the time to be open, but also as men, taking the time to ask about wives' mental loads, I think is so important, because Fee takes on so much from her work and for the children and stuff that, you know, I might not even register that she's taking on. So actually just being able to say, so what's on your plate this week, what's on your plate today, just to find that out and see how I could help take it on, because, you know, sometimes I miss things.
That's amazing. Thank you, Trevor.
Right.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for giving us a little glimpse. It's a very personal journey going on the Freedom Course, so it feels like a real privilege to have someone on that is willing to just peel back the curtain and show what the journey's like, and some of the things you've had to go through, and some of the things you've discovered. Thank you so much.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, but before we go, I've been doing this little segment between interview slots, but I feel like I'd love to do it while you're still here, which is just no, don't be afraid. It's just to kind of to remind anyone that's joined that why we're doing this, and what we're trying to achieve. So we've talked a lot in the interview about just wanting to normalize talking about where we're at, to normalize reaching out for help, try and be really practical about that and drill down on what does that look like and how do we do it. But also, this is a fundraiser, and the thing we're trying to raise money for is the Freedom Course, because the Freedom Course is completely free for people that come onto it. So it's been a principle of Mercy's for 20 years that we'll never charge for people that need support. We want to provide that so that finances is never a barrier. We would love for people to donate. There's links wherever you are. There'll be a link somewhere. If you're YouTube, it's just down below. If you're on the website, there's a link below, or there's one up in the corner. Is there anything you could say on our behalf to people that might be thinking, is this a worthwhile cause to give to?
Oh, do it.
You heard Trevor, do it.
It's so worthwhile. I mean, the work that you guys do is incredible. I've said to Paul in the past, you know, myself and Fee, we want to do something in the future where we kind of make a product or whatever, or something that my wife can design that will give funds to Mercy as well, because we truly believe in the work it does. You know, I'm living proof of that, and my friend at church is as well that recommended it to me. So yeah, if you can, even as you've said already, give a couple of quid, you'll get doubled. It's great, definitely worth doing. Yeah.
Trevor, we can't thank you enough for your time today. Any final parting words, thoughts?
No, just that we'll be praying for you, my friend, and championing you on. Keep that shield firm.
Will do. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to be cheeky and just go, if you fancy listening to my podcast, it's
go for it.
It's wehavethishope.co.uk. That's our website, and you can buy our products and listen to our podcast all on there as well. We are on Spotify and things like that as well. But
if someone's listening to this and is on YouTube comments, can you pop that in? Just say it one more time, Trevor. So
it's wehavethishope.co.uk. I'll put it on there in a minute. I've been listening all morning, and I'm intending to carry on listening. So
I highly recommend it. It is a great podcast.
I enjoyed Paul's drinking Coke, not realizing he was on air. That was my favorite.
That's amazing. Trevor, thank you so much for today, and keep listening.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye.